Euroclear is a nice, although a bit like hidden institution, because we are a bit big settlement house, which means that we do post-trade, so we are connecting capital markets. So we are connected to 2,000 clients. So all the governments, all the stock exchanges, all the big financial institutions, and we are there at the heart of capital markets, holding securities like in a safe way. Modern CIO, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife, in the sense that you need to be like very versatile. So I believe the biggest ability that you need to have is to connect to various stakeholders. If you want to be successful, you need to be super connected to business, to control functions, to operations, to like other companies, because people are looking at you to set the trends, to explain the reality, and like to propose what is possible.
This is CIONET TV. My name is Hendrik Dekkers. I'm here today with Michał Paprocki, who is the Group CIO and the Executive Committee member at Euroclear. A very warm welcome, Michał.
Hello, Hendrik. Happy to be here.
Michał, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit who you are, what's your background, and how did you arrive in this position as Group CIO at Euroclear?
So, it's been 7 years for me in Belgium. Mm-hmm. I moved originally for the group CTO job at Euroclear, and how it started, at that time I was like turning 40, and I thought it's time to move on. It's been 15 years for me in the previous position, and I was like super successful and actually very happy. I built a very nice team, and I believe a nice organization behind, which is still ongoing as part of ING group, so the banking. Yep. And then I reached out to headhunters, basically saying, well, I would be looking for a new challenge. I wouldn't mind a new country and even more international setup. Yep. And that's how I ended up, and like very happy ever since.
And you're happy in Belgium now?
Yes, indeed. It's a great country.
Good. Maybe, Michał, before we start, let's picture a little bit the context. What is it that Euroclear does very well? And also, what is the new Euroclear compared to 5 years ago?
Euroclear is a nice, although a bit like hidden institution, because we are a bit big settlement house, which means that we do post-trade. So we are connecting capital markets. So we are connecting to 2,000 clients. So all the governments, all the stock exchanges, all the big financial institutions. And we are there at the heart of capital markets, holding securities like in a safe way. And just to give a figure, it's 43 trillion euros on our account. So we cannot make any mistakes or take any risks. And at the same time, we're connecting all these financial institutions, giving them a wide array of financial services.
Okay, super. That's what Euroclear does. But there's also a new Euroclear compared to 5 years ago, much more data-driven, much more digital. It's a digital financial market infrastructure company. So can you describe a little bit this company today compared to 5 years ago?
We are indeed making a bit of pivot in our strategy. It's not that we are reinventing ourselves into something totally different, because we are a highly regulated institution, which is there at the heart of capital markets, and it's not that we are like going anywhere to something different. However, I believe the change is big. We have new shareholders, we have new chairman of the board. Half of my colleagues in the executive committee are new, and we coined a strategy which is called D-Square FMI, which stands for Data and Digital. So long story short means that we are going to continue what we do at our best, which is to hold securities, which is to do what we call delivery versus payment, and collateral management and asset servicing and funds. But on top of that, we go beyond, and perhaps this going beyond best describes our strategy, in the sense that we believe that thanks to data, blockchain technologies, we could do more than that. So we would like to satisfy even more needs of our clients using the recent technologies. Okay. And that is the essence of what we do.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But more a little bit about you. You are in your 4th year as Group CIO. And so in this time of massive change, you are known as the great enabler. So you manage 35% of the total workforce, 40% of the cost base. So you have a massive responsibility there. So with that much weight on your shoulders, how do you define the role of a modern CIO? And you've said that the CIOs must be the best connected person in the ExCo. What does that really mean?
That it means that a modern CIO, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife, in the sense that you need to be like very versatile. So I believe the biggest ability that you need to have is to connect to various stakeholders. you would have like a totally different discussion with your shareholders about like the value creation. Then you're jumping to a typical like CFO discussion about the cost and productivity. Then you jump into business and commercial discussions about new products creation and profitability. Then you are discussing with your risk management and audit about the risk posture. You are also interacting with clients, with regulators, with other CIOs, with a broader industry. So I believe this role is super versatile, and I'm sometimes calling that indeed the great enabler, because that is how we are literally defining that in the strategy. So this is this ability to connect and like speak the language of particular functions, domains, clients, shareholders that makes this CIO role very unique. I'm super happy. It comes with a lot of responsibility, but it's also very versatile.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, but also, I mean, one of the best jobs that you can do in a company like that, I can imagine, right?
If you look at the metrics that you mentioned, we are actually like a hidden IT company. Just we are like heavily regulated, and of course we are a financial market infrastructure, so like the core of capital markets. But if you would look under the hood, you would discover that indeed like 1 in every 3 employees actually sits with me, so working for broadly understood technology, and so is the part of the cost base. So I believe we are a big IT company in a highly concentrated B2B business, but again, it comes with a bit of constraints or some additional blend of these regulations that we need to adhere to.
Okay. Michał, one of the things that you have done is you established a dedicated technology committee at board level. What's the goal of that? How was that implemented? Explain that a little bit.
And I believe it is quite fundamental. So early on, when I became CIO, I had interactions with the chairman of the board and the CEO saying, okay, how do we have good proximity between like board, which is non-executive, and like executive committee? And historically, the boards, they usually have subject matter experts from a given industry, plus people that have profile in risk management and finance, like a typical board setup. If you want to be, again, like a digital and data FMI, you also need to have technology profiles. So what we did is, as a part of like board refresh and management scenario, we did put people or hire people that have relevant experience, that are basically previous CIOs or CTOs. So they were sitting where I'm sitting right now. And they could be a natural counterpart to work on the board level to emphasize the importance of technology, of like investments, of scalability, architecture, data. And that could be a bit of my counterpart. So I'm working very close with a subset of the board, which is the technology committee. And then on quarterly basis, we are discussing the things that are relevant for us that go beyond traditional risk or financial view. And I believe that did a miracle for us to making sure that like all the way from the shareholders and the board to like all the individuals, we have like the whole chain of understanding.
And so that's like your soundboard as well, that's your active, I mean, you have their super talents and super experience that helps you to grow as well.
They challenge me, so the role of the board is to challenge, so they would like push me like even harder to be even more like innovative, even bolder in the ambitions. But on the other hand, they have affinity with like my subject, so they understand where I'm coming from, so they could also be my best advocates to defend certain business cases and strategies. So I'm really grateful for having that opportunity. That is something quite recent that we only developed 1 year ago.
Let's start from the top, and let's start from the strategy, and let's start from the board. And so many CIOs and companies, they struggle to get airtime even with the board. And you didn't just present to the board, but you educated the board, and you organized offsites on AI and digital assets. And you even took your chairman and your CEO to Silicon Valley twice. So what was the aha moment where your non-tech leadership really saw the light and flipped the switch, where they said, well, IT is not a cost center, it's really an enabler for innovation and for the business itself?
So first of all, Henrik, you touched upon something I believe like super profound. I believe the starting point for IT, it's why. So why do we do certain things, and like what is that we want to achieve? That's why it is important, at least I found for myself, to make sure that you have like all the connections to the board, to the chairman, to the CEO, so that you could anchor the function and expectations towards me and towards the organization that I'm representing. And then I found out that technology is actually a difficult domain for quite a lot of people outside of IT. It is still a bit of like black magic, in the sense that it's very hard to comprehend. And the domain is getting even more diverse. So here comes data, here comes artificial intelligence, blockchain, quantum. So it could be very confusing. So then at the very beginning, I thought it's important to make sure that we set the scene and do a bit of education, a bit of like connecting the dots, starting with the senior most officials. So we went there indeed to Silicon Valley twice. So the first one was to discuss with hyperscalers, because we determined quite early in our business and IT strategy that we would be better off to have like a true partnership and go to the cloud in a very decisive way.
Yeah.
And that was like a bit of beauty context whereby we were talking with all the three big American hyperscalers, seeing which one understands our industry best and could be like a true partner for us. The second one was more of a fintech festival. So we were looking at more AI companies, so a bit of more niche players to see how did they grasp digital, client proximity, data services, platform economy. Again, all the elements that are in our business strategy so that we could see from the people that are doing that best. And you ask about this great aha moment, and that was indeed, it was like a bit funny, but sometimes like almost like a bit sad, because we were looking at these companies and sometimes you are talking to, you know, like people in their like late 20s and the whole AI company, it's like 20, maybe 30 people like incorporated like last year. And then you look at the valuations and the multiples, and then they are like more worth than like Euroclear. And we are there, you know, like 6,000 people, 60 years on the market. So that was an aha in the head of my CEO, chairman, and myself. I'm like, if we want to significantly increase value creation to our shareholders, we need to also move into this platform economy, into data and digital. So going beyond the current business model and again, like pivoting into this D-square FMI.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about your offsites on AI and on digital assets with the bigger group, and what did they learn and how did they react to that?
So that was the next level when we thought it would be good to connect business and IT a bit better. So I'm actually spending quite a lot of my time with my peer in the executive committee, which is a chief business officer. So the two of us share objectives and very often go hand in hand.
Okay.
So what is important in a true agile way of working is that we are in the same boat. So we need to take a primary hypothesis. So what is that we believe in? And very often you have like a lot of doubts and anxiety. You don't know how the market's going to evolve. So we are taking these conscious choices and we deliver that together. And then we thought what would be good to show this unity and also educate like our direct reports and the layer below is to organize some like deep dive days when we are really investing. So we would take like the whole like top 50 of the company, put them in one room and say, okay, this is the day we discuss about artificial intelligence. So let's have some keynote speakers from Microsoft, which is our cloud provider. But let's see what is happening in Europe with Mistral. Let's see what is happening with ethical AI, so like Anthropic. Let's have some calls with other CIOs and business leaders from other companies that are already on a similar journey. And that provoked like a lot of thought process and realization. Okay, this is the market phenomenon. This is what the environment is doing. So that gave us more confidence, insight, so that we could reflect upon our own strategy. We do something on AI already, on quantum and on artificial intelligence, because I believe these trends are the most relevant in our strategy.
Okay. Now, you shared with us that you have what is called an edge strategy.
Yes.
And so there was the strategic decision to invest more into tech than in the other business areas. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because getting more money also comes with a responsibility, of course. So take us a little bit through that strategy, please.
It's a difficult equation, I wouldn't hide, because still quite a lot of the organization would perceive IT shop as, again, like a bit of black magic, and that requires a lot of money to constantly build capabilities, modernize the existing, scale architecture and likes. Yeah. While for the other functions, the only discussion in town, it's about like productivity, efficiency. So there's a bit of additional obligation for technology to explain like why do we build certain things and what is the value behind. Yeah. Is that going to help our business to increase the revenue, to decrease cost, or to decrease the risks? So what is important, I guess, in this equation is to properly understand these value drivers. Again, before we go into like what and how, and we all have a tendency to jump the gun and go into the execution, I believe the true magic lies in explaining and aligning on the why. Because then IT is indeed perceived as the enabler. Okay, we do understand that without this technology capability, we cannot satisfy the needs of the client. So that is why we do that. Instead of IT being perceived as like 10 years ago as just like a cost center, like yet another type of operations that should be managed on the unit cost and just pure efficiency. again, you need to combine both. So it's not like a carte blanche that you could just keep investing.
Yeah.
But I believe it's a success of my organization that we have this realization that we are in a heavy technology spend situation because we would like to grow our business.
Okay, and how do you do that? How do you define such a strategy? Is that something that you spent on your own over the weekend and Monday morning you come back and here is the edge strategy that we're going to implement in the next 3-5 years? Or strategy development, how does that work?
It's an effort of the whole executive committee and the board, because strategy is the matter of the board. So the way it works is that it's our CEO and our executive committee. You could think about like a series of offsites in very beautiful places of Belgium, whereby we are discussing certain subjects. Okay, what is our view on geography? Do we operate mostly in Europe? We pivot to US, to Asia.
Yeah.
Okay, there would be another one on products. Do we stick to traditional products or we go into tokenized economy? There would be another one on the way of working and the culture of the company. There would be another one on finance, another one on data and digital. So we would like align ourselves on the direction of travel and like assume certain hypotheses.
Yeah.
That would then translate into this is what we want to achieve. We coined the term EDGE, which stands for like efficiency, growth, and digital. And this is how we frame that so that we could then get back to our board and have that approved, saying, okay, this is who we are right now. And this is who we are going to be in like 5 years from now with all the metrics and thanks to this EDGE. And EDGE is also helping us to like have an interaction with our employees, because there's one thing to design something and it always looks like very impressive, but there's another thing to make sure that it's really cascaded and understood by the whole organization.
Okay, so you have a great strategy developed together with the colleagues, presented and agreed by the board.
Yes.
Budgets are there, and then you have to start implementing that. And so tell us a little bit about the different products that you have created there. I mean, there's the digital assets one that is really, really interesting, that is blockchain based, and where you issued €1 billion digital native bond. So tell me all about that, because that sounds very, very exciting.
So digital assets are one of the big trends that you see in capital financial markets, but even broader than that. So the advent of blockchain made all of us realize that you could tokenize or democratize certain assets. And just to give like a simple example, so right now all the systems are heavily centralized and they are managed by like one single entity. And there's a lot of friction related with that. And you have like the business hours which are related with certain geography. So the big promise of tokenized and digital assets is that the markets could operate 24/7 and it could be way faster and cheaper. So we could move securities, you could move money, you could move collateral. So it's just like more fluid, it brings a bigger value. That was all enabled by blockchain as a technology. And again, at the very beginning, I guess the only connotation was with like Bitcoin and like crypto assets. And still some people are like very bullish on that as like yet another asset class. Some people are a bit like more cautious. There's a big debate happening. But you see that as the market is maturing, even for mainstream organizations such as ourselves, when again, our value is like trust, we believe that it makes sense to build new products. So what we did is that we built so-called digital securities issuance. So it's a brand new platform. So using blockchain, cloud, microservices, so like state of the art, that enables issuers of the debt, of the fixed income, to do that in a more fluent way and attract better group of clients. And I would give you some names. So for example, World Bank was one of our first clients. So they could issue a digital native bond and then like find subscribers to that. So investors, thanks to this platform, it is cheaper for them and it is faster for them because we are also using smart contracts for all the logic behind.
Okay, that must be one of the bigger blockchain implementations in the world, then I can imagine, or not?
I believe we are quite an innovator in this phase, because whereby like quite a lot of people are doing proof of concept, proof of value, sandboxing. So there's a lot of activity happening. We actually have a production grade environment. And I'll give you maybe a challenge related, because everyone is looking at like technology, it's a technology challenge. Actually, I counted that whilst we were delivering that, 40 or even like almost 50% of the total budget and workload of the project had nothing to do with IT. That was compliance, that was legal, that was tax. So making sure that these digital native bonds actually have the meaning, substance and protection, because we are talking about large amounts. Again, it's like €1 billion. and they only exist in this dematerialized format. So if anything would go wrong, you don't have a backup with your traditional centralized system.
Yeah.
That's why it was very important to give confidence. And again, like talking with World Bank, you cannot really cut the corners.
Yeah.
It needs to be state of the art.
So, Michał, in that project, what was the biggest hurdle for getting conservative markets to really buy in and to trust blockchain programs?
I think involving other functions. Again, as I mentioned, it's not only a technology play. Actually, this one is the easiest part because like everyone is excited in my own shop. So we love building new capabilities. And of course, that is what like IT always loves to do. I wouldn't underestimate the challenges required because again, it's a new technology, it's a new operating model. There was a lot of building of capabilities. It's not something that you just take off the shelf because the market is very nascent. The solutions are only emerging. But what worked for us is that we involved early on like risk management, compliance, legal, finance, audit to make sure that like everyone is satisfied because very often like IT is producing the solutions, but then we had a joke in my previous company that the market failed to respond to our offering, but it only means that maybe it was not production grade. So I guess a successful CIO would connect early on to all the counterparts and making sure that we do not only produce like a technical capability that we deploy to the market, but it's packaged into product that could be consumed. And that was the success factor between our blockchain issuance platform.
Yeah, also the time to market. When you go to the market with this is an important thing, I can imagine, right?
That's why you need to sync with clients. That's another thing that sometimes ironically, IT is onboarding agile way of working, which means that you need to deploy very fast to the markets, like, Scrum teams and like deploy frequently.
Yeah.
But then we see in the B2B business that there's also a lot of like integration and market testing. So you could be disappointed that you produce software super fast, you deploy that into the production, and then like half a year later, you see like onboarding of the clients.
Yeah.
That's why it is super important, especially for the mission critical services and for the capital markets to synchronize at least with your main anchor clients so that the absorption rate is like pre-agreed. And the companies still have a bit of traditional cycle in the sense that you need to make sure that it was budgeted, it was planned, it is in the roadmap, you have like release weekend secured and live.
Okay. Michał, let's talk about a couple of other new revenue streams that have been created, new products that have been created through the collaboration and the co-creation with fintech companies and with your hyperscaler. And so you've launched Investor Insight and Easy Focus. Let's first talk about Investor Insight. What is that product all about? How did that, and how did you implement that, launch that? Tell us all about that.
So Investor Insight is actually an interesting one. That was one of the first like business IT joint initiatives, again, like under my watch, that we deployed into the cloud right away. So like very, very fast and being very close with the clients. That was originally deployed on the French market when we saw a lot of traction and then like expanded geographically.
Okay, and what does it do? This
Investor Insight, as the name indicates, is providing insights for the investors. So very often we have like issuers of the debt. So let's assume that you would like issue a new corporate debt and you are curious like who are the end investors. We call them beneficiary owners. So who has just invested into my debt so that I could have like a meaningful discussion with my clients or like shareholders. And we were using the reference data that we have, but also reference data coming from the clients and from the market to enable the issuer, very often like a large financial corporation, to have like a very good and meaningful dialogue with their investors. And by doing so, they could gain more credibility and hence their debt could be cheaper to finance. So that's a great business value that was brought into the market.
So it's bringing issuers and investors together so that they can learn from each other and better collaborate?
Yes, and for us that means going beyond. So as I mentioned, we used to do more like factory-based production or processing services, and then we go beyond. So we give insights and intelligence so that we create even more value on top of the existing business.
Okay. Another program or product that you launched was Easy Focus, which is AI-based. Tell us all about that.
Easy Focus is even more complicated. So in our environment, the financial transactions are very complicated. So you are looking at the vast capital markets. And again, like one headline figure, so we are moving the GDP of Belgium twice per day.
Okay.
So we're talking about large amounts of money. And sometimes the settlement is failing. because of different tax regimes, sometimes because of different regulations between the countries. Sometimes someone didn't secure enough credit or money to buy the securities. Sometimes the securities were already used as a collateral in another transaction. This creates frictions, and they're like very painful because we are talking about large amounts of money, so this like billions daily.
Yeah.
So we thought it would be good, again, going beyond our traditional services, not only to allow this exchange between the issuers and investors, but also gather all the data and see what are the patterns of the transactions that would normally fail. And we are using quite a traditional predictive analytics, and we built like an AI model that allows us to anticipate that. So we could early in the day spot, okay, it looks like this transaction will fail. So please, dear client, like react, providing more securities or more money or more collateral so that you could prevent from that. And the clients are very happy with us giving them these additional insights, because otherwise they would have like a lot of exception management. They would need to use even more money to secure their transactions. So we are using artificial intelligence to give clients insights against some adverse events so that they don't happen in the first place. And we could look at our so-called settlement efficiency ratio. It was, let's say, 95%. We could almost go like up to 100 because we could anticipate, almost like in the Minority Report movie, we could like anticipate some adverse events and prevent them.
Okay, and these products are really new revenue streams then?
Yes, they create new revenue, and they are responding to the needs that we couldn't fulfill early on. And this is where you have like a perfect play. And I guess this is the role of CIO as well. That on the one hand, you see the market frictions. So what are the pain points for our clients? And on the other hand, you see the advent of technology. And then it clicks saying, okay, there is this need that was always there, but now we finally have a technology to fulfill that. So if we put that into the combination, we have a meaningful product and we could generate new revenue.
Okay, super. Now, not only do you innovate with fintechs and with hyperscalers, but also internally by doing hackathons. And so I understand that there was a new product called ESG Select that came out of a hackathon. So how did that happen, and what's that product all about?
So first of all, hackathons are also one of the things that we launch from technology organization for the whole company, and we don't want that to be just an IT event. Sometimes hackathons are like, a bunch of people in their hoodies, like just doing code, like everyone is excited, and it makes all the sense for the IT division, but somehow it doesn't transmit beyond. So early on, we make an assumption we really would like to have like company hackathons. Of course, it's going to be driven by IT, but it should be a business one. Yeah. So give me the problem statement. And the problem statement for this hackathon, so the very first one, was actually how can we enrich our services and bring new revenue? And the teams, that is perhaps like very important, were combined. So you had business participants, operations, and IT. And they were jointly innovating on some products. So the winning idea called ESG Select enables the use of collateral. Collateral is something big that you are using on the market to basically fund your transactions. Again, just like a headline figure, as we are sitting here, you have 2 trillion euros of outstanding collateral. So it's like a very big market. So if you could optimize that usage even by a single bips, so like 100%, it makes like a great difference. ESG Select, again, as the name indicates, it is using ESG criteria to select the choice of collateral, because sometimes papers of the companies that are growing in a sustainable way have a better credit rating. So if we could, again, advise our clients, if you make this choice, you could like save the money. That is also what they are looking for, and they are very much willing to pay us for this additional service.
Okay. Now, how do you go from an idea like that to a system that is in production? What are the different steps that you have to go through? How long does it take? What's when can you launch the first MVP, and when does it really go into acceleration, let's say, and adoption?
So first of all, we say again, our concept of hackathon is that there's no free lunch. We tell early on to the people, okay, like whoever is going to win hackathon, you should implement that into production. So it's not that we just design and build like a mock-up and then we forget about that. No, the idea, it is exciting, but it also comes with the obligation that the very same team should deploy that towards our clients. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we secure money up front. So we know that there would be like one winning idea, and would ring fence a pot of money to make sure that we could like monetize and actually deliver that. And the third thing is that we try to do it in a time-bound like situation. So normally hackathons are like around springtime.
Yeah.
So we normally would say, okay, the product should be deployed by the end of calendar year, like in no less than like 1 year.
Okay.
And of course, it takes a lot to mature the product. So there comes like security, risk management, pricing, so all the enterprise features. But it is very exciting to our like IT engineers and colleagues on the business side that they know upfront that if they win, they would actually have the chance to make it happen in production. That gives them the extra boost.
Okay, sounds like a lot of innovation is going on then inside the company, right?
Quite a lot. But again, innovations in financial institutions are tricky. Actually, our company purpose starts with we innovate, but then it continues to bring safety, efficiency, and connections to the markets. So this is like the balance that we need to strive.
Okay. Mika, let's talk about AI and your AI ambition that you have in the company. I mean, you told us that you have launched an AI navigator for your clients called Evia. Tell us all about Evia.
This is exciting, Henrik, and I appreciate that we waited with AI so long. I'm actually just back from San Francisco in the conference, and like AI was name of the game. So like I spent like 1 week talking about like nothing else than AI. And here, sometimes it's a bit of mixed bag, because on the one hand, everyone is sure, and I subscribe to that it is the biggest technological evolution like in my professional life. I cannot compare that even to like anything else. It is just greater than like cloud and other trends.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, what you see is that more and more companies are actually failing on their AI journey. So you see a lot of stories that AI transformation didn't bring the results that we are looking for.
Yeah. At the famous, what is the Harvard Review article, 95% of the project so far don't deliver, correct?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky balance. So as a CIO, you need to manage the excitement, saying like, yes, I hear you, and I'm actually excited personally as well. But on the other hand, you need to start with the value.
Yeah.
So again, it's like first the why question, like what is that we want to achieve? So in terms of Evia, which stands for Euroclear Virtual Intelligent Assistant, we saw a lot of frictions from our clients that are like sending us very simple queries. So how is my transaction going? Can I withhold the tax? Are you aware of that? There's a discrepancy. We see some irregularity. And we saw that it is a very time consuming for us to respond to these queries.
Yeah.
We could talk about like 30,000 emails like each given day. So it's like
Each
huge
day?
volume. Yes.
Wow.
And for the clients, it's of course annoying because their friction is that they have a wait time.
Yeah.
So then we thought, how about we deploy this time like generative AI to answer all these questions in a fully automated way. First, we built a product that we used internally. So we equipped our own operations with an agent that would log into the production systems, and that is like the hard thing to do, that would log into all the knowledge database and give them the answers on the fingertips. We ran it like that for a bit of more than a quarter, and once we are like satisfied with the results, we now enable that to the first clients, and they actually very much like that, because this is the promise of AI, that you could talk in a very natural language, or like prompt based via quite an interesting website, and you get the results instantly with the accuracy and confidence level that would normally require human-to-human interaction. We still keep it as a supervised process in the sense that we just don't like let it go, but if you look at the productivity savings, but also client engagement, it is actually very promising, and I believe with the advent of even more intelligent agentic AI, we could even go into transactions. So not only provide information and advisory, but actually enable our clients to execute transactions on their behalf.
Is there a way that you can measure client satisfaction for this project and cost savings?
And that is what we do indeed. So we look at the client satisfaction via surveys. So on a regular basis, we would ask our clients.
It's kind of an NPS score? Or?
Yes, that is very similar. And we observe that thanks to Evia, but also other new products that we are putting in a broadly understood like digital space, so that it's easy to deal with and frictionless, the client satisfaction has actually increased. And one of the KPIs that I put on my own IT organization that we share with our business colleagues is client satisfaction. So it now increasing to 82%, and the starting point was like, below that. So we already see that, especially that if we ask clients for details. So what is that you appreciate most? These sometimes like very small innovations that you constantly put on the markets that you show, okay, I hear you, I care for you, and I'll give you more automation. A bit internally, it looks like we could release quite a lot of people that were doing pure operations, and we could move them to value-add services. So we reinvest our scarce talent like in a just better way.
And by testing it first inside the company, you know that the systems are not starting to hallucinate and like the very first generations of systems did. So, and you cannot have that, I can imagine, right?
It is way better now. So the systems are still bound to please or satisfy the user. That is what I bet you see with your own like interactions with like ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever you use. Like, so it's like very eager to answer any question. And if the model will not have the question, it will just like make up the answer like to please you and to keep your engagement. And that, of course, is like super dangerous, like in the professional and B2B context, when you have legal liability, when you have obligation. So you need to put like model evaluation and some additional guardrails on top of that. That's why you cannot just like launch that plain vanilla. Perhaps like in other industries, in more like B2C world, it is possible because the level of accuracy is acceptable. But like in our world, we need to be just extra prudent.
Okay, and how do you implement that? Because one of the big concerns with AI in general is the security of the data, and these companies going to use all your intelligence for their own good and so on. So how do you make privacy work together with AI models?
Yes, that is quite important. So what we did is that we set up an AI center of excellence. So it sits with me in the technology division, and then you are grouping people whose only duty is to make sure that it is enterprise grade ready. So choosing the models, making sure that intellectual property is protected, making sure that it's all cyber resilience, that you have so-called observability. So you have like an audit trail, you actually understand how the machinery works. And also helping business, operations, colleagues outside of IT to build their own AI logic, because it should be a federated model, whereby like the heavy lifting, the standard setting, the guardrails are normally driven by technology. But you also want to enable all your business users to build their own logic. And that is what we spend quite a lot of time for. So we just don't go wild with like models. And it's very tricky because you have new model like every 3 months. So it's actually quite confusing. We already see that some of the early Gen AI models and products that we put like last year, they are already rendered obsolete because they need a model replacement.
And what the underlying technologies are Mistral and Anthropic, or what are you using there?
We have an open approach. So whereas we have a strategic partnership with Microsoft and we tend to use Azure and scale on that technology, we also want to have like an open approach to the models. So we choose the model that fits best the business need. And sometimes the models are like better. This one is better in software development. This one is better in client services. This one understands like finance and capital markets. So we are not bound to one provider. Actually, this multimodality, it's, I believe, the future.
Okay. Mika, maybe a little bit out of the context. I mean, we are in a super AI hype also on stock markets and so on. So are we going to have an AI crash in your view?
So as mentioned, I'm literally like back from San Francisco when it was like 1 week of like AI only discussions. And personally, if I look at financial models and valuations, I believe it's a bit of like not justified. So if you would ask me, I believe there would be a correction in the market, and I think it's going to be in 26. Actually, you might say that it has already started. If you look at like Nvidia, it lost like 700 billion in the last like 6 weeks. But like just look at the amounts involved. So whereas I believe the hype and attention about artificial intelligence is justified because we see these companies making revenue and delivering tangible value, perhaps the evaluations went like a bit too far, and there would be like a very healthy correction.
So more a correction than a crash that we've seen in the dot-com times then?
I don't believe it's a dot-com bubble because again, the models are bringing revenue, but the hype,
the overvaluations.
You hear a lot of people, like including the ones designing these technologies, such as like Sam Altman and OpenAI, even he would say that perhaps like we go too much and we should be more grounded with like financial reality.
Okay. Now let's talk about the AI for all your employees. I understand that you've rolled out co-pilots for all your employees and that you have a goal of 20% productivity savings. I mean, that's a very bold number, 20% savings. How are you measuring that? Where are you on that roadmap? And what's the secret sauce of using that in the correct way?
So first of all, we had a big discussion, should we actually enable a co-pilot to all employees, because it's a bit of controversial decision in the sense that it actually costs a lot of money. So the licenses are not cheap. So we had a discussion, what do we do? And then we concluded, if we want truly to be this digital and data company and be very technology savvy, we need to make sure that our employees have access to all the like state-of-the-art technology. So it was quite a bold move that I was pushing forward. Let's like roll it out to everyone. And we know that the adoption level would be very different. So some people are like early adopters and they would like already go all in.
Yeah.
Some people needs to be convinced. So it came with a lot of trainings and use cases. So we would typically have like, tip of the week. If you want to generate like a report, this is how you do that. And we go like more and more advanced. So at first people started with like, let's do the minutes of the meeting.
Yep.
Let's do the action plans. Let's like, formulate an email, produce a PowerPoint. Now we are going into something more advanced. So we are using the reflection models and like notepads when you are like gathering like a lot of data. So you have the context setting and then you could do some deep research and reflections, and these models are more powerful. How do we measure that? So we take a look at like, first of all, people are like self-declaring. So what is the gain that you have in time? So thanks to using Copilot in all kinds of blends, like what is the time that you are spending?
Yeah.
So for example, my software developers using GitHub Copilot, they would save about 20-30% of the code generation. Code generation is only part of what developers are doing as a part of software development lifecycle, but still it's not like negligible. If you look at Office users, they would declare something like 20%.
Also, yeah.
And then we have another like ExCo level discussion. Okay, what do we do with these savings? Do we reinvest all of them? So we see that the staff engagement will increase and people should be more productive. So we could perhaps like freeze the current workforce and expect them to do more.
Yeah.
Or do we want to like optimize the labor force because now we don't need that many people? And still, because of the growing company and the needs to have like more value add, we are going more for the former rather than the latter.
Okay, super. Some would say that Copilot is a castrated OpenAI, ChatGPT. Is that correct?
It is correct in the sense that ChatGPT, if you use like Pro version, that's what I use for my like personal basis, it has more rich functionality. While Copilot, it's more simplistic. It is tailored for the Office user using Office ecosystem. So the Outlook, the Word, the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
But the beauty and the power of Copilot, as opposed to ChatGPT, is that you could provide more context setting. So for example, we built a tailored Copilot for our legal department, whereby as opposed to ChatGPT, we could point this Copilot into this is the repository of all the contracts, all the agreements, all the applicable laws, all the intellectual property, so that the advice that is given to the lawyers is very specific and it's very compliant. And that I cannot do with like cloud and open models, because by doing so, I would like expose our intellectual property. So I believe Copilot is geared towards different use cases, and ironically, it could be even more powerful. Even though the plain vanilla version of like open models are like more powerful, they could generate graphics, they are multimodal.
Okay. Michał, you have a target that you've put out there to do 70 million euros of savings with AI. Through AI and also process redesign, and you already banked the first couple of million euro savings there. And everybody is talking about AI productivity gains. So how do you measure this, and how have you implemented these first savings, and how are you going to reach this ambitious target then?
So that's perhaps like a good example again of like CIO being the great enabler, because this is where I teamed up with my CFO, because CFOs are normally like the most skeptical animals. They would say like, what is the return on investment? Like, show me the money. So together we formed like an AI program, because the first starting point is that it shouldn't be only driven by IT, because then IT would build like a lot of capabilities, but like, are we able to extract value? We agreed with the CFO on some like initial principles. And for example, the first one would be, we need to have the owner of the business case that doesn't sit in technology. So someone like a business leader should own the outcome and drive the implementation through. Second one is break even. So what we say is that it should have a positive return on investment, like approximately in 1 year from now, at worst like in 2 years.
Okay.
So if we invest like 1 million, we need to have like 1 million savings like in a year from now. Then what we did is that we use, of course, AI Center of Excellence, which is a pure technology play, but we are also using other functions, which is process redesign, which is rethinking the business logic, which is connecting to the clients, to make sure that we take this like horizontal, like end-to-end view and extract value. And then we say, well, okay, we are going to cut that in the waves. So we put like dot on the horizon, this like big hairy goal. Wow, we believe that there's a potential, even like 70 million of productivity savings, because you could like automate or redesign the way we do business in like broadly understood operations.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we want to comfort ourselves that actually it's the reality. So we started with the first use case, which is in our case like new issues. Okay, let's use that on this case and see, can we extract value? Is there an owner of the business case? What is the return on investment? What is the technology choice? Let's make it happen. And because we are finalizing this use case and we see the value being created, okay, then we go more. So I believe it's a combination that on the one hand, you set a very ambitious target, and on the other hand, in a truly agile way, you just deliver in smaller increments. And that is the success recipe. But again, AI is evolving very fast. So I believe things could be easier with more agentic.
Super. Let's talk about governance and the Obeya model and the Obeya process. So that we come to visual management. So I understand that you have introduced the Obeya process to the entire executive committee. Tell me about the Obeya process, what it is, and the Obeya rooms that you've set up.
First of all, it started with my own team. When I started as a group CIO, I was like designing together with my colleagues, direct reports, like the IT transformation. So what kind of organization we want to be like 5 years from now. So as an input, we have like all the business priorities, and then, okay, we need different capabilities, different way of working, different talent, different architecture, engineering. How do we bundle all of that in something that we could track? Yeah. So then we designed so-called strategic shifts and like, okay, these are like the 20 or 30 things that needs to happen like strategically. Yeah. And then Obeya is a very handy visual management technique whereby you put like all of that on the table. So it's like a physical room, this Obeya, where you put it on the wall, and then we are meeting on monthly basis, actually scrutinizing the progress. And that creates like a lot of transparency and team feeling, because you see that this is our joint backlog. So as a team, we're responsible to make it happen. And each one of us has like a 1, 2, 3 like post-its. And then you would normally tell your colleagues, okay, I'm on to that and it goes okay. Or perhaps I'm on to that and I need some help. I'm going to be delayed, I need more money and so on. Or you could raise your hand saying, wow, I don't know how to do that, so I need the team to help me out. And it proved to be successful. So we are running that for 3 years already in technology. And then when we started to discussions in the executive committee, okay, how do we manage transformation on the company level? I actually invited my fellow colleagues. I'm like, so this is what we do for technology. And actually in ideal world, we could scale it up on the enterprise level. And guess what? It was like very warmly received because it gives transparency to start with. But there's also a certain allure of simplicity because you put only the key elements and you could track the progress. So you have like a bit of satisfaction that you see, okay, things are moving. And you have like transparency, like who is in the lead. So now we are using that on a regular basis as an executive committee. And actually, as of next month onwards, we are inviting board members so that they could also experience that. And the number one like aha moment is that, wow, I finally could connect the dots so I could see how this outcome actually depends on the following initiatives. So it gives like a lot of simplicity to all the complicated delivery.
So it's like a business control room, in fact?
Some people call it cockpit or control room in the sense that like on a single wall, you have it all. Of course, we have a digital version, so you don't need to be in the room. You could see that in the system. But again, it's nice to deal with some physical artifacts.
Very interesting. It reminds me, 20 years ago, that was in fashion as well, these rooms where you had like forward-looking indicators and backward-looking indicators and so on. So this has come back now then.
People love it, yeah? This flow from like, I want to achieve this, hence I need to do that, and this is where I'm going. It is like, it is the power of that lies in the simplicity.
Michał, another big implementation that you've done or that you worked on together with your business officer is the corporate portfolio management. So you've kind of restructured that, took that to the next level. And I know that is for a company a super strategic tool. If you do that well, if portfolio management is well under control, then I think you start to get the company under control. So tell me a little bit about that, the change that went on there.
So that's again one of these examples where like CIO needs to be the great connector or enabler. Because if you play portfolio management too hard, then the organization is like too much IT driven. So basically IT is setting the base for the business, which is not correct. If you play it too passive, saying, okay, the business would decide and like IT is more like, how do we deliver that? Then you are also like not the source of like great value. So the way to strike the balance is actually to run the process, which would basically say like on a regular basis, which is like once per year and then once per quarter, We're looking at the whole body of work. So what needs to happen? And that is admittedly the most difficult process that we have throughout the year, because we always have like more demand than like the capacity that you could provide. So this process basically breaks down all the delivery into like single business cases of large programs. You need to fill in the value card. Like, what do we expect? Is it going to increase revenue, decrease cost, or decrease risk? And like only these three. Then like, okay, who's going to lead that? How does it like refer to our strategy? Is there a logical sequence in the sense that one initiative would like help the others? And we have like three sources of data. So sometimes it's IT itself saying, well, we need to go to the cloud. We need to modernize our capabilities. We need to augment our recovery. We need to build AI platform that would scale for the more use cases. Sometimes it's coming from client facing, so commercial teams. I have this client demand. I see this, what the competition is doing. And sometimes it's coming from our corporate systems, saying this is the way to run finance, human resources, risk management, audit. So we put all of that together, and then there is this magical process and like respective tooling, and it ends up in the Obeya room, whereby we jointly decide on these priorities and we own that as an executive committee. So it could be that it's very much driven by IT and still enterprise architecture, for example. It's like very well positioned to have this transversal view and like advise and inform the whole company. But the secret is that it is owned by all of us.
Yeah, but it's a difficult exercise because you have to kill some people's pet projects and personal preferences, right?
Very often there are some like projects that I take for granted and I really want to pursue that. And then like I see that there's something more valuable, like driven by a colleague of mine, and I need to let go even some of my own agenda. And like everyone is right from his own point of view. But the point is that we need to make a collective decision.
Okay, almost like making a budget for Belgium nowadays.
Looks like, yes.
Is it also a way to control shadow IT and to make sure that everything is, I mean, that you have, that governance is not bypassed?
I think yes. So shadow IT exists in every organization. And honestly, I'm sometimes like turning my blind eye. So I see some like small developments and I don't have the empire like building initiative. So there is a bit of citizen development. There are like some small changes. And I'm very happy to empower the users to do so. I would call them power users. I would request them to use standards. I would have monitoring mechanism. I would like that to be automated. And of course, like all the scrutiny. But again, it's a nice extension of the like centralized IT organization. But corporate portfolio management allows us to make sure that we don't have like a secret horse trading, but like everything is done in the open format. And we could really compare the business cases and decide jointly. So to a large extent, it like removes all the frictions down the organization. And I believe this is the obligation of the executive committee or like senior business leaders to do that.
Okay.
And again, it's not easy nor pleasant at all.
That's very important. Now let's talk about the IT organization itself and IT talent as well. So what are the changes that you have implemented over the last 4 years since you became the group CIO on the IT operating model, the way that IT itself is organized?
So on a bit of internal cuisine, so we recruited quite a lot of senior profiles. So what we see is that our strategy on the business side, the corporate one, requires a lot of new capabilities, a lot of new business models. So you need to have transformative skills. That's why like everyone reporting into me right now, it's new. And all of my direct reports are coming from the industry with like a proven track of records in transforming, in changing the companies. And I believe this is fundamentally important so that you have like a fresh perspective and you have like the relevant experience. We are doing the same on our like L-2 layer. And we are also upskilling and training the existing personnel. So that is like super important. Another thing that we did is that we flattened organizational charts. So we say that, you know, IT should span on the 3 layers of command and not 6 or 7 as it was before, because we want to have like a flat, empowered organization. Another thing that we did is that we ensured more business and IT proximity. So we make sure that there's a nice mapping of verticals in IT with like verticals on the business side, so that they could jointly decide on priorities, on execution, and like on driving ship forward. Okay,
so you changed your complete digital leadership team?
Yes.
And you said that you recruited for transformative experience. So what is the specific DNA that you're looking for? What are the questions that you ask in your interviews when you're hiring new people to see if they really have the transformative capabilities that you're looking for?
We have company values that starts with C. So there's like the whole system. And the two ones that I'm looking for is curiosity and courage.
Okay.
And I believe this is quite important. So curiosity, sometimes it's not easy in technology because a lot of people are like very opinionated. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of things that made them successful in their life. So they are like reproducing what worked for them in the past. Yeah. But the future is like unpredictable and this is changing so fast that you need to have this like curious mind, almost like of a child, to actually like ask questions, to explore, to make some experiments. So this is all like the agile way of working. So I'm looking for people that are like very keen on learning, on challenging the status quo, and on being just like personally curious, like having interest also like outside of their core domain. And the second trait that is like very appealing to me is actually courage, because what we do requires people to raise their hands and say, okay, it's on me, so I'm going to drive this change. I will not hide behind steering committees, like processes, like the collegial decision making, but I would drive the change, even if it's difficult for me, even if I'm moving out of my comfort zone, because very often you need to connect to other colleagues within IT, but also way beyond with business, with control functions to make it happen. So fundamentally, apart from hard skills, I believe on the personality traits, curiosity and courage are fundamentally important.
And how do you, if you do I can imagine that you do a couple of interviews yourself. How do you know if somebody is curious and courageous?
Actually, it's an art, and I'm not saying that I'm the master of that, but since I love Star Wars, I'm just like looking for the inner force. So whenever I'm like interacting with someone, I'm like, do you have can you tap into your force? So will you be willing to go beyond? Sometimes your previous experiences are illustrating that. Sometimes the way you behave, like the questions that you're asking, like the way you present yourself also like gives you these informative points. And honestly, I'm also I pay a lot of attention to recruitment. So I would typically ask some of my business colleagues to step in, some of my IT colleagues, and I'm looking for a blend that would also fit the culture of the company. Yeah. Because you don't want to have everyone being identical. You need to have a very diverse team.
Okay, so you flattened the organization, you look for transformative experience, you put a new digital leadership team around yourself.
And codifying agile way of working. So we used to be quite waterfall because again, the industry was quite regulated and quite conservative by nature. And if we want to bring more innovations, have faster time to market and greater client satisfaction, you need to dare to experiment. And in order to do so, you need to connect business and IT into almost like one organism that would make small decisions, so-called increments, and actually deploy that to the market. So we also pay a lot of attention to codify this mechanism into business and IT together.
Okay. I also understand that you created a new technology center in Kraków, in Poland, your country, where you originate from. Tell us about the intentions of that. Is that just labor arbitrage, or is that just, or do you build specific capabilities and competences there as well?
No, we are looking for, especially for talent. Again, as mentioned, we need a lot of new skills because we are building these new capabilities and modernizing existing. So I need people with artificial intelligence, with data skills, with cyber defense, with full stack engineering, with microservices. And it's quite hard. So there's a lot of competition on the technology market and almost like economy independent, there's a huge demand everywhere. Yeah. So whereas we are very happy to be Belgium based and majority of my employees are actually here, we are also looking at other geographies where we could tap into the talent. Yeah. And we are quite happy with Poland because we used to have already an operations hub there for the last 10 years. And since we are happy with the geography, we thought, okay, we could double down on that and open a technology hub and attract these engineering profiles. Yeah. And that is what we do, but that is not the only response we do because it is next to offshore development center that we have in India, next to the teams that we have in London, in Paris, in Hong Kong, and other geographies.
Yeah. And Kraków is a nice city, right?
Kraków is a nice city, and of course, coming from Poland, that is very pleasant to me, but that was not the only criteria. So we have a very good past experience, and we believe that the value for money and the expertise that you have in a large tech-savvy market is what is very attractive and relevant to our business strategy.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about your cloud strategy? Because you said you have developed you set up a 7-year a strategic collaboration with Microsoft, one of the hyperscalers, that you selected and you went to the Silicon Valley to see which one would fit best. How do you make such a decision? And are you not afraid of vendor lock-in if you just go for one provider there?
But that was spot on. So those were the conversations we had in the board. And basically my line of thinking was, if we want to be innovative, if we want to move faster, then we are better off to connect with one of the hyperscalers because they have like way more experience to help us like transform the ship. Then we did a round with indeed like all three of them, and I involved the chairman of the board and the CEO of the company, saying like, let's discuss with them, because there's one thing that is technology proximity, and honestly I believe all three of them have a very similar capabilities. So I'm quite confident that I could go with each three of them and I will be happy on the tech side. Where they make a difference is how well do they understand the regulations, how well do they understand the financial markets, capital markets, how well they are actually willing to co-invest with us and actually share some responsibility. And that is why we ultimately chose for Microsoft. But then indeed the discussion was like, okay, aren't you afraid about vendor locking? What are the alternatives? And this question is quite hard, especially in the current geopolitical situation, actually keeps coming back. And honestly, my good answer for that is that, well, we are not betting on one horse. So we still have our own data centers and mission critical workloads. So like the core settlement engine would rather keep on premise because it is highly regulated and it is like the type of workload that is not necessarily like super cloud ready. Whereas we have a cloud first strategy, meaning that whatever new we do and all the technologies that we modernize and do lifecycle management would be better off to put them into the cloud. Because our clients are more and more into the clouds, the fintechs are into the cloud, so it's easier for me to bring some meaningful value.
And being completely vendor neutral or independent is a hallucination as well. I think it's impossible, or not?
Honestly, we are using mainframes for the last 40 years and they are coming from like one particular vendor and I don't really have like a viable alternative to that as well. So I guess like running technology shop, you need to choose your alliances. And it's a bit of illusion that you could be like independent and on your own.
Okay. Michał, one thing that I would like to ask you now, 7 years at Euroclear, 4 years as a group CIO, how have you, if you look at yourself, how has your leadership style evolved over these 7 years?
I'm becoming more patient.
Okay.
So I'm more reflective, I believe, and seeing more the long game. Because I have a bit of tendency like to jump into delivery. And the more executive function you have, the more it is important to do stakeholder management, storytelling, connecting the dots, spotting impediments. So I believe I'm like a bit of growing up in my years, but also in the function. And that is perhaps like the biggest difference I observe in my leadership style. So I'm still like the person that I used to be, but now I am perhaps like choosing the battles like more correctly and understand that it takes like structure and system to deliver something.
Okay. Now, one thing that struck me in our preparation of this interview is that you said that one of your favorite quotes is from Yoda, which is, you must unlearn what you have learned. I don't understand. Explain me what you mean with that.
I love Star Wars, and this actually very quote was used to illustrate that sometimes the environment is changing so fast that what worked for you before actually doesn't work in the future. And that is ironically, the harder, the more successful you are. Because with the success comes like a bit of like confidence and like you're not that curious, you're not that like humble anymore, so you take things for granted. So if I would say like personally, like one thing that I need to like unlearn, and I'm actually doing that, is that I am unlearning some of the techniques that I used in the past that you could mastermind everything. So for example, I used to be quite like self-confident, like, give me a problem, I would like, mastermind, okay, this is the roadmap, this is the sequence, and like off we go. Yeah. And again, with a more volatile world and with a bit more like business dilemmas, you just cannot work like that because it's impossible for like one single person to mastermind. Yeah. So instead, I'm like more curious, more progressive, and actually more involving other people in the decision making. Okay,
nobody's perfect. We all have our weaknesses. So what would you say is one of your personal weaknesses that you're still working on? And how does your new leadership team compensate for that?
I think I'm still not explaining enough. So what I observed, and again, I'm preaching the story of CIO as a great enabler or connector, but like true to that, you should spend more time connecting with your shareholders. And I observed that at the very beginning, perhaps I didn't spend as much time as I should, in the sense that I took some things for granted. I don't know, we go into cloud computing, like of course, like everyone goes into the cloud, is going to be like faster, cheaper to operate, consumption model, like you don't bother to explain. But then like 1 year into the making, you realize that people are asking some like basic questions, and then you need to stop and think, okay, you know what, let's do like 1 day on education about cloud, so that we could like answer all the questions and making sure that we have this universal buy-in. I neglected that a bit, and actually my team is compensating in the sense that I would say, okay, like we hear you, but like we need to do the town hall, we need to explain that properly, we need to interact with our additional layer. So making sure that it all scales.
Okay. Now, Michał, you've built quite a career. I mean, you have a super job at a super company. So what would you say is one of your most important gifts that you have that enable you to do this, big serious job?
I think it's positive energy. I even defined my leadership purpose as like the one, and again, it's Master Yoda and Star Wars, that I tend to generate like a constant flow of positive energy, in the sense that I have a nice natural ability to deal with a lot of like adverse and like difficult situations, and like energize and give this force to my colleagues and make things happen. So I always see like the glass half full. And for me, it's always like a story of like learning, developing and growing. And I believe this is this enthusiasm and the positive mindset that I could like bring to the table.
I know that you're a big learner. You like to learn. You like to read as well. What is that you're reading lately that is that helps you in becoming a better human and a better CIO?
On a better CIO, I'm reading quite a lot about agentic artificial intelligence, because I sense that it is our obligation as CIOs to explain that, and also don't be complacent. And again, it is changing so fast that honestly, it is hard for me to catch up. That's why I actually travel quite a lot, and I'm tapping to a lot of CIO communities. So with CIONET, with Gartner, with Microsoft, with like a lot of industry events. So making sure that we compare the notes and like challenge ourselves, and I could proudly copy from my like more experienced colleagues. That I believe it's fundamentally important. What I also like is doing a lot of podcasts. So I like running, and especially in the weekends, I would typically put the music on. And for example, like a podcaster that I love most is Lex Friedman. And that's a person who is based in US, and he's doing a lot of long format interviews, but I mean like 3-4 hours type of interviews. Very often it's about technology, but it could be about, the dynamics of the society, about history, about lifestyles. So I found this in-depth format as like very reflective and very illustrative to me.
Yeah, Lex is a very inspiring guy, right?
Yes.
Do you follow Sam Harris as well?
No? But Kara Swisher, for example, is like another podcaster that I like a lot, because she has access to a lot of like decision makers, politicians, CEOs of the tech companies. She has a bit of shorter and more provocative format, but I believe she's very good like to call out some things.
So what's her name? I don't know.
Kara Swisher. So she's doing the Business Pivot podcast. Okay. Highly recommend it.
Okay, I'll start following that one. Now almost coming to the end of this brilliant interview, Michał, and thank you so much for it. If you take a step back, there's a lot of transformation that have already been going on inside Euroclear and new organizations, new CEO, ExCos, and so on and so on. A lot of changes, IT that has changed, new products that have been launched, a lot of things have going on. Where do you see the next big transformation wave? AI is of course the big thing, but what do you see else that is? And is it quantum? Because we haven't touched on quantum yet. You mentioned it very shortly. Is that going to be important in your business as well, you think?
Very likely so. But again, if I look at 5-7 years into the future, I believe the biggest trend of all of them would be artificial intelligence. So the more agentic it could be, in the sense of like executing the real operations, not only being an advisor to a human being, the more relevant it becomes. And you see this notion of like frontier companies where you say, as a leader, you are going to manage a mesh of like humans and agents. And no matter how scary it sounds, I believe like this is exactly the future.
Yeah.
quantum, I believe, could be the next big game in town, even though there are like serious discrepancies about the readiness of the technology. You need to reach like 1,500 qubits and have it like stable so that you could like break the algorithms and reach so-called like quantum supremacy. We believe it's like 7 years from now. Quantum would be ideal for the hardest industry problems. So for example, optimizing collateral, which is like thousands of parameters, like, billions of dollars. You could think about like Monte Carlo simulation and some like quantum algorithms that could beat any of the classical compute that we are having. On the flip side, quantum is coming with a huge cyber challenge, so we need to be resilient and like quantum proof in terms of the algorithms that we use for encryption. So it's going to be big as well.
Okay, super. Now, these interviews are being watched by CIOs from around the world and also by the upcoming and the CIOs of the future, ambitious young band that want to step in your footsteps. What is the advice that you would give to people that want to become a group CIO of a big financial services company like yours?
So for all the young women and young men, I would say dare to do that, because I know that some people are still a bit afraid. I'm coming from economics background, so I don't have a degree in computer science. And for some people that would be like a bit of knockout criteria because it's not like a typical CIO track. I believe people are coming with very different experiences, and sometimes your like great enabler means that your ability is to connect the dots from various domains. And secondly, I believe it's like build alliances and communicate. So there's like as much as you could go alone, but if you want to be successful, you need to be super connected to business, to control functions, to operations, to like other companies, because people are looking at you to set the trends, to explain the reality and like to propose what is possible.
Okay, super. And on that note, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Henrik.
Thank you, Michał.
Because they have like way more experience to help us like transform the ship. Then we did a round with indeed like all three of them, and I involved the chairman of the board and the CEO of the company, saying like, let's discuss with them, because there's one thing that is technology proximity, and honestly I believe all three of them have a very similar capabilities. So I'm quite confident that I could go with each three of them and I will be happy on the tech side. Where they make a difference is how well do they understand the regulations, how well do they understand the financial markets, capital markets, how well they are actually willing to co-invest with us and actually share some responsibility. And that is why we ultimately chose for Microsoft. But then indeed the discussion was like, okay, aren't you afraid about vendor locking? What are the alternatives? And this question is quite hard, especially in the current geopolitical situation, actually it keeps coming back. And honestly, my good answer for that is that, well, we are not betting on one horse. So we still have our own data centers and mission critical workloads. So like the core settlement engine would rather keep on premise because it is highly regulated and it is like the type of workload that is not necessarily like super cloud ready. Whereas we have a cloud first strategy, meaning that whatever new we do and all the technologies that we modernize and do lifecycle management would be better off to put them into the cloud. Because our clients are more and more into the clouds, the fintechs are into the cloud, so it's easier for me to bring some meaningful value.
And being completely vendor neutral or independent is a hallucination as well. I think it's impossible, or not?
Honestly, we are using mainframes for the last 40 years, and they are coming from like one particular vendor, and I don't really have like a viable alternative to that as well. So I guess like running technology shop, you need to choose your alliances. And it's a bit of illusion that you could be like independent and on your own. Okay.
Michał, one thing I would like to ask you now, 7 years at Euroclear, 4 years as a group CIO, how have you, if you look at yourself, how has your leadership style evolved over these 7 years?
I'm becoming more patient.
Okay.
So I'm more reflective, I believe, and seeing more the long game. Because I have a bit of tendency like to jump into delivery. And the more executive function you have, the more it is important to do stakeholder management, storytelling, connecting the dots, spotting impediments. So I believe I'm like a bit of growing up in my years, but also in the function. And that is perhaps like the biggest difference I observe in my leadership style. So I'm still like the person that I used to be, but now I am perhaps like choosing the battles like more correctly and understand that it takes like structure and system to deliver something.
Okay. Now, one thing that struck me in our preparation of this interview is that you said that one of your favorite quotes is from Yoda, which is, you must unlearn what you have learned. I don't understand. Explain me what you mean with that.
I love Star Wars, and this actually very quote was used to illustrate that sometimes the environment is changing so fast that what worked for you before actually doesn't work in the future. And that is ironically, the harder, the more successful you are. Mm-hmm. Because with the success comes like a bit of like confidence, and like you're not that curious, you're not that like humble anymore, so you take things for granted. Mm-hmm. So if I would say like personally, like one thing that I need to like unlearn, and I'm actually doing that, is that I am unlearning some of the techniques that I used in the past that you could mastermind everything. So for example, I used to be quite like self-confident, like, give me a problem, I would like, mastermind, okay, this is the roadmap, this is the sequence, and like off we go. Yeah. And again, with a more volatile world and with a bit more like business dilemmas, you just cannot work like that because it's impossible for like one single person to mastermind. Yeah. So instead, I'm like more curious, more progressive, and actually more involving other people in the decision making.
Okay, nobody's perfect. We all have our weaknesses. So what would you say is one of your personal weaknesses that you're still working on? And how does your new leadership team compensate for that?
I think I'm still not explaining enough. Mm-hmm. So what I observed, and again, I'm preaching the story of CIO as a great enabler or connector, but like true to that, you should spend more time connecting with your shareholders. And I observed that at the very beginning, perhaps I didn't spend as much time as I should, in the sense that I took some things for granted. I don't know, we go into cloud computing, like of course, like everyone goes into the cloud, is going to be like faster, cheaper to operate, consumption model, like you don't bother to explain. But then like 1 year into the making, you realize that people are asking some like basic questions, and then you need to stop and think, okay, you know what? Let's do like 1 day on education about cloud so that we could like answer all the questions and making sure that we have this universal buy-in. I neglected that a bit, and actually my team is compensating in the sense that I would say, okay, like we hear you, but like we need to do the town hall, we need to explain that properly, we need to interact with our additional layer. So making sure that it all scales.
Okay. Now, Michał, you've built quite a career. I mean, you have a super job at a super company. So what would you say is one of your most important gifts that you have that enable you to do this, big serious job?
I think it's positive energy. I even defined my leadership purpose as like the one, and again, it's Master Yoda and Star Wars, that I tend to generate like a constant flow of positive energy in the sense that I have a nice natural ability to deal with a lot of like adverse and like difficult situations and like energize and give this force to my colleagues and make things happen. So I always see like the glass half full. And for me, it's always like a story of like learning, developing and growing. And I believe this is this enthusiasm and the positive mindset that I could like bring to the table.
I know that you're a big learner. You like to learn. You like to read as well. What is that you're reading lately that is that helps you in becoming a better human and a better CIO?
On a better CIO, I'm reading quite a lot about agentic artificial intelligence because I sense that it is our obligation as CIOs to explain that and also don't be complacent. And again, it is changing so fast that honestly, it is hard for me to catch up. That's why I actually travel quite a lot and I'm tapping to a lot of CIO communities. So with CIONET, with Gartner, with Microsoft, with like a lot of industry events. So making sure that we compare the notes and like challenge ourselves, and I could proudly copy from my like more experienced colleagues. That I believe it's fundamentally important. What I also like is doing a lot of podcasts. So I like running, and especially in the weekends, I would typically put the music on. And for example, like a podcaster that I love most is Lex Friedman. And that's a person who is based in US, and he's doing a lot of long format interviews, but I mean like 3-4 hours type of interviews. Very often it's about technology, but it could be about, the dynamics of the society, about history, about lifestyles. So I found this in-depth format as like very reflective and very illustrative to me.
Yeah, Lex is a very inspiring guy, right?
Yes.
Do you follow Sam Harris as well?
No? But Kara Swisher, for example, is like another podcaster that I like a lot because she has access to a lot of like decision makers, politicians, CEOs of the tech companies. She has a bit of shorter and more provocative format, but I believe she's very good like to call out some things.
So what's her name? I don't
Kara
know.
Swisher. So she's doing the Business Pivot podcast.
Okay.
Highly recommend it.
Okay, I'll start following that one. Now almost coming to the end of this brilliant interview, Michał, and thank you so much for it. If you take a step back, I mean, there's a lot of transformation that have already been going on inside Euroclear and new organizations, new CEO, excos, and so on and so on. A lot of changes. IT that has changed, new products that have been launched, a lot of things have going on. Where do you see the next big transformation wave? I mean, AI is, of course, the big thing, but what do you see else that is... And is it quantum? Because we haven't touched on quantum yet. You mentioned it very shortly. Is that going to be important in your business as well, you think?
Very likely so. But again, if I look at 5-7 years into the future, I believe the biggest trend of all of them would be artificial intelligence. So the more agentic it could be in the sense of like executing the real operations, not only being an advisor to a human being, the more relevant it becomes. And you see this notion of like frontier companies where you say as a leader, you are going to manage a mesh of like humans and agents. And no matter how scary it sounds, I believe like this is exactly the future. Yeah. Quantum, I believe, could be the next big game in town, even though there are like serious discrepancies about the readiness of the technology. You need to reach like 1,500 qubits and have it like stable so that you could like break the algorithms and reach so-called like quantum supremacy. We believe it's like 7 years from now. Quantum would be ideal for the hardest industry problems. So for example, optimizing collateral, which is like thousands of parameters, like, billions of dollars. You could think about like Monte Carlo simulation and some like quantum algorithms that could beat any of the classical compute that we are having. On the flip side, quantum is coming with a huge cyber challenge. So we need to be resilient and like quantum proof in terms of the algorithms that we use for encryption. So it's going to be big as well.
Okay, super. Now, these interviews are being watched by CIOs from around the world and also by the upcoming and the CIOs of the future, ambitious young man that want to step in your footsteps. What is the advice that you would give to people that want to become a group CIO of a big financial services company like yours?
So for all the young women and young men, I would say like, dare to do that, because I know that some people are still a bit afraid. I'm coming from economics background, so I don't have a degree in computer science. And for some people that would be like a bit of knockout criteria because it's not like a typical CIO track. I believe people are coming with very different experiences, and sometimes your like great enabler means that your ability is to connect the dots from various domains. And secondly, I believe it's like build alliances and communicate. So there's like as much as you could go alone, but if you want to be successful, you need to be super connected to business, to control functions, to operations, to like other companies, because people are looking at you to set the trends, to explain the reality and like to propose what is possible.
Okay, super. And on that note, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Henrik.
Thank you, Michał.